Delta 1 Simon, how long will be our top up UAV? Het is een afval voor 10 minuten. Dank u.
Ja, woestman, goed. Das kommt nicht mal ausgeholt hier. Aber gern. Jetzt muss ich da noch kurz mein Objektiv putzen. Da. Ja, wo ist der Gil?
Nein, warte, wahrscheinlich ist es besser, wenn er dort ist.
Ja, genau.
Jeder durchfliegt, ist das größte Industriert. Und wenn er klicken kann er...
Also, gut. Ja, ich will da gar nicht, aber der Gil kommt jederzeit her. Ja, alles gut. Das ist korrekt.
Er hat alles runtergefahren, oder? Hey, er hat alles runtergefahren.
Hij is heel smal, wirklich. Aber das ist jetzt auch nicht... Ja, du nur noch ein bisschen zwirbeln, das ist schön. Langsam Kerosin.
Das Pilot hat das Briefing nicht mitgemacht. Er hat gesagt, ja, wie das letzte Mal. Die haben mir gesagt, wie das letzte Mal. Ja, het is goed.
aber ich will Schatz, ich will den Schatz. Nicht durch den Schweizer Fernsehen. Feldstecher, ich will.
Kannst du noch schauen, ob es etwas verarbeitet hast? 2 Gründe Latte.
Ja, ich.
Ich habe einen guten Schatz.
Ja, ich bin guter Schatz. Das kann man schon aufdrehen, Zeit.
Solltest du noch etwas heben, oder geht's?
Ja, mega. Ja, aber das ist einfach scheiße.
Schade, jetzt hast du gerade verpasst. Ja, da durchkommt, ja. Jetzt sind sie kleine, ja, das letzte Mal sind sie da wieder. Das ganze Bagage da reingepasst, die Pläne sind. Jetzt machen sie das Ganze von uns nicht draussen. Okay. Aber wenn ich jetzt so geht, das ist gar nichts. Ja, weil das bestimmt, ja, natürlich auch nicht mit dem Bereich. Das ist die ganze Sache. Ja, das letzte Mal. Ich hoffe nicht, dass wir nicht noch da uns. Ja, das ist gut. Ja, das ist gut. Ja, ja. Das ist
Ah, was ich da nicht wie aber heute Nacht ist.
wenn ich vorhin da gesehen habe.
Aber ich habe da nicht gesehen.
Ja, ja, also,
Und das kommt doch.
aha, die sind für die Wirtschaft.
Das ist aber schwer. Hey, hey,
Kommt ihr weg, geht's? Ist gut.
Jetzt ist der Heli gesehen. Ja, so ein Stück stärker.
Gut, jetzt hat mir gerade einer geschrieben, wir haben 20 Minuten Livestream.
Sicher nicht.
Kopf, Tommy, wo ist die 20 Minuten? Stell mal den Livestream ab, Mann. Ich bin da, ich bin jetzt mal alle weg, die Geist ist ja abgegangen. Nein, noch ein ist mehr, gesagt 20 Minuten. Man füllt noch ein ist mehr. Das ist schon nicht gleich, aber jetzt ist nicht fertig.
Nein. Nein.
das ist heiß. Guck mal, nein. Das ist gar nicht. Das ist nicht potzverliebt. Und wenn wir die anderen Liga wären. Ja, unbedingt. Komm, Mandel. Komm, Mandel. Also, komm, jetzt sind wir da shoppen. Komm nach raus. Nicht den Glasscheibe hören. Ja, aber du, weißt du, in der Stadt, dann musst du drauf fahren. Das ist gar nicht mehr hell, das ist so scheiße. Bern Präsente. Aber es sind wieder mal Fake News von den Zürcher, oder?
Ja, ist schon gut. Kann ich mal schauen?
Auch, sicher.
Deine Reaktion testen.
Ja, deine Reaktion. Schau, der Arne Gio ist ja da. Nicht der letzte. Oh, da, ja, es ist schon in der Knäuel. Sie geht gar nicht. Hey! Ja, das ist schon so zusammen.
Oh, schau jetzt da. Jetzt geht wahrscheinlich mit dem
Also, das sind jetzt sicher ganz ein paar noch ein bisschen im Warteschlaufen. Es ist all eingebaut, all drin. Dann ist es verlassen, unbestimmte Zeit. Es ist ein bisschen warm, aber ich könnte jetzt auch auf die WC. Es gibt auch keine Verpflegung. Yes, let's go. Das ist ja eure Zeit, Herr. Ist das nicht? Kannst du schon noch ein paar, zwei.
Jetzt rollt er. Eine hele rollt jetzt.
Ist so oder ist es so? Nein,
Kein Fake News.
sorry, nicht. Dir schauen, Giel, ich will. Ich darf ein Event. Das ist
Aber er hat etwas drauf. Gibt es eins weiter, die wir gesehen haben? Das ist
very long road.
Ja.
Oh,
Ja.
ja, scheiße, weißt du, was es Ja, kommt das nicht. Mein Roverland, yes, bitte mal.
Vertraulich, jeder schon so vertraulich gefallen.
Oh, sieh nun.
Ist gut, hoch auf der Wald, verstanden, hoch. Gehen wir, schau jetzt Zeit, oder?
2 sollte es jetzt pieken.
Wir gehen da drauf.
Vorher musst du noch einchecken, Davos.
Wir gehen auf 16.
Ja, so eine Golden Geil, es ist eure Zeit, oder? Packung, Kosten, Stellen, alles. Scheiße.
Du hast da gerade in der 16.
Nein, siehst du den Knopf in
Schade.
Das wäre schon schön, ja. Ja, da, schön.
Jetzt zuerst so Kolonie.
Ah, ja, ja. Danke für
morgen um 5 Uhr aufgestanden.
As he writes this, compare that to the SNP, more interested in squabbling over independence than using a record settlement to fix Scotland's public services.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Challenging economic inactivity and supporting the vulnerable across the country is something that we all want to address. So would you be surprised to learn that in Northern Ireland around 11,000 people previously supported by the UK's Shared Prosperity funding programmes will see those programmes cut dramatically, compounded with 400 job losses. So can I ask the Prime Minister, does he support those cuts of those vital programmes, and will he arrange an urgent meeting for me with the relevant decision maker in government and the organisations who have been impacted so that these changes and challenges can be resolved?
Prime Minister.
We've delivered a record settlement for Northern Ireland in the budget to strengthen public services and to kick-start growth. And the Local Growth Fund, designed actually in partnership with the Executive, will see £45 million every year to support local growth. But I'm very happy to make sure that ministers meet him to discuss the particular concerns that he has.
Kirstensson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1.5 million women in the UK live with endometriosis, which is a painful and life-changing condition. As chair of the Endometriosis APPG, I met Jessica Smith and Endo Warriors West Lothian to discuss their campaigns for a national endometriosis registry to capture and audit diagnosis, treatment and outcomes. Will he join me to commend the work of Jessica, Endo Warriors West Lothian and Endometriosis UK, and will he meet with me to discuss creating a registry to improve the lives of women living with endometriosis?
Prime Minister.
Well, let me pay tribute to her and all women and others who are campaigning on these vitally important issues. Far too many women are left waiting in serious pain for care, and that's why we're investing £8 million in research on diagnosis, treatment and pain management. I know the Minister for Women's Health will be keen to talk to her about her proposals and the issues, and I thank her for raising it.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a constituent not yet 30 years old, a civil servant who's just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. She has been told she has a very short time to live. Because of her condition, she was given a retirement date, which was just last week. She has not received notification of any actual pension payment and has spent long hours trying to contact Capita. HMRC has claimed that all outstanding documentation has been supplied to Capita in November. I've written to the Chancellor, contacted the MP hotline and Capita. It still remains unresolved. Can the Prime Minister, along with the Chancellor, help to get this action resolved immediately?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this case, and I'm truly sorry to hear about his constituent. If he wouldn't mind following up with the details of the case, I will make sure that it's dealt with urgently on behalf of his constituent.
Neil Coyle.
Mr Speaker, yesterday I welcomed Bermondsey PC Kevin Webster to Parliament after his recognition as Met's PC of the Year 2025. Will the Prime Minister commend Kevin for his local work and that of Southwark Labour Council's amazing nighttime antisocial behaviour team? Will he tell us when they'll have new powers under the Crime and Policing Bill? And will he remind the Met that its access standards require all local officers like Kevin to be a maximum 20-minute walk from their ward, a policy currently going unmet in Rotherhithe?
Prime Minister.
Can I congratulate Kevin and thank police across our country working hard to protect our communities? The party opposite decimated local policing and we're restoring it. There will be 3,000 more neighbourhood police on our streets by spring, an example of the change people will feel this year. Our crime and policing bill will give officers more powers to tackle knife crime, shoplifting and antisocial behaviour. I want officers to have those powers as swiftly as possible. The Tories and Reform voted against them.
Alfred Blandford.
My constituents in Chester South and Eddisbury are deeply concerned by proposed cuts to police community support officers across Cheshire. The Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, Dan Price, was silent on this issue, seemingly content to see numbers slashed across the county until residents and local MPs spoke out. Now he seeks to present himself as campaigning to save PCSOs, whilst proposing to substantially increase the precept, all at the same time as planning to increase spending on his office by £513,000 next year. Does the Prime Minister agree that this represents a failure of leadership and that that money would be far better spent increasing PCSOs on our streets?
Prime Minister.
This comes from the party that broke our criminal justice system, just like the fact they broke our economy and our NHS. They hollowed out local policing. We're restoring it. There'll be 3,000 new officers in spring of this year.
Steve Witherden.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The thug in the White House has shown that he doesn't listen to grovelling or sycophancy. He'll continue to harm British interests no matter how compliant we are, and, like all bullies, he will always find the weakest link. Will the Prime Minister close ranks with our European allies and commit to retaliatory tariffs?
Well said.
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I've made our position clear. I've set out my principles. I'm not going to yield on those principles. But as I said on Monday, of course we need to protect our national interest, and we will always protect our national interest. But simply hurtling at the first opportunity into a trade war is going to hurt working people and businesses across the country. And that is why I'm working hard to make sure we do not get to that point, and I'll continue to act in the national interest.
Mr Speaker, now the Prime Minister may be aware that my local authority in the East Riding of Yorkshire is the lowest funded per pupil for children with special educational needs and disabilities, and that his local authority in Camden is the highest, an inequality he has repeatedly pledged to end. Well, Mr Speaker, the results are in. Next year, children in my local area will receive just under £1,000. Children in his local area will receive over £3,800. The gap is getting wider. So can the Prime Minister explain to the House why he thinks children in my constituency are worth so much less than the children in his?
Prime Minister.
We're applying their formula, the one that you put in place in government. We're changing it. Special educational needs is probably raised with me more than any other issue in this House. We're proposing reforms. The issue he's highlighted, the problem he's highlighted...
Order. Sorry, Prime Minister. Mr Holden, as Shadow Secretary of Transport, you'll begin the express train and it'll be out of here.
I think he may be making himself the next candidate for the Thursday defection, because it's oh, maybe it's someone else. Those that shout loudest end up over there. And I thank Reform supporting our recycling moves, because soon they're going to be a party entirely made up of...
Order. Prime Minister. Mr Holden, I think you need to leave. No. Prime Minister. OK, Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Police officers in Greater Manchester are facing exceptional pressures as they work to keep our communities safe from horrific terror threats, hate crime, organised crime and regular mass large-scale protests. But despite this, GMP received the second lowest percentage funding increase of any police force under the provisional settlement, leaving it £12 million worse off. Now, I know the Prime Minister will share my concerns, so will he urgently work with the GM Mayor, Deputy, myself and Greater Manchester MPs to ensure that GMP has the funding it truly needs to keep our communities safe?
Here. Prime Minister.
Can I thank her and say I was humbled to visit Greater Manchester Police after the Heaton Park synagogue attack. The professionalism and bravery that they showed was remarkable. Mr. Speaker, we've boosted total police funding, and Greater Manchester will receive up to £902 million, an increase of over £31 million. I want to reassure my honourable friend we'll continue to work with her and local leaders to make our streets safe.
Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituency of Melksham and Devizes does not have a minor injuries unit, leaving many to travel far afield to Bath or Swindon to access A&E services. Would the PM please meet with me to discuss the need for an expanded hospital provision in my constituency? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Thank him for raising this on behalf of his constituents. I will make sure he gets the meeting with the relevant minister to talk through his particular concerns so that we can seek to address them.
Jasmine Qureshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of Conservative austerity, councils are finally getting the support they need to deliver for residents. In my constituency of Bolton South and Walkden, under the leadership of Councillor Nick Peel in Bolton and Mayor Paul Dennett in Salford, increased funding is being turned into restoring frontline services, investment in town centres and support for families. Does the Prime Minister agree that the councils need serious leadership and long-term funding certainty to deliver, not short-term protest politics that put services at risk? And will he commit to continuing that support?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for a question. Labour's boosting funding for councils that were chronically underfunded by the party opposite. I pay tribute to Labour councils delivering results for her community in stark contrast to the division and chaos we've seen from reform councils wherever they've been elected.
Katie Lamb.
Tens of thousands of people across Kent and Sussex were without running water last week. While the response of South East Water was shambolic, the Staplehurst Emergency Help Team got a bottled water supplier, set up a collection station and delivered water to vulnerable people. Using only volunteers, they supported local people, businesses, farms and care homes with 20,000 bottles of water. Does the Prime Minister think, as I do, that South East Water should be ashamed to be schooled in crisis response by the volunteers of the Staplehurst Emergency Help Team?
Yes.
And has he, like many of my constituents and many of our colleagues, lost confidence in South East Water's Chief Executive?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising. The situation is completely unacceptable, and we welcome Ofwat's investigation into the company. That is the right thing. The Environment Secretary met company bosses last week to stress the need for accountability, and ministers are continuing to chair daily meetings. But it is totally unacceptable and it needs to be fixed.
Lee Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For too long, many of my constituents in Corby and East Northamptonshire have not had access to good, secure, well-paid jobs. We made a commitment in our manifesto that we would change that. You can't grow an economy based on insecure work, where from one week to the next, somebody doesn't know how many hours they're going to work or how much money they'll be paid. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that all workers should have the hours that they actually work reflected in their contracts so that we can give all working people the security to plan their finances, the security to plan their lives and the security to build a future for themselves and their family?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm proud of this Labour government delivering the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. And we're ending exploitative zero-hour contracts, ending unscrupulous fire and rehire practices, plus parental leave and sick pay. And workers will benefit from those rights in April, Mr. Speaker, and they should never forget that Reform and the Tories opposed every single one of them.
Robert Jenrick.
Mr. Speaker, one of the last meetings that I took as Shadow Justice Secretary was with the parents of Lenny Scott. Lenny Scott was an exceptionally brave prison officer. He uncovered corruption in his prison. He left the service, and years later he was hunted down and brutally murdered. Because he died after leaving active service, there was never any compensation paid to the children that he left behind. I know the Prime Minister would want to right this wrong. I wrote to the Justice Secretary privately after I discovered this, and I should say his parents never asked for any support. Would the Prime Minister correct this, ensure that this brave man's children have the support that they need as they grow up without the father that they deserved, and join me in thanking all the brave men and women who serve us in our prison service?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and I will make sure that it is looked into as a matter of urgency, given the circumstances he's set out.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I strongly welcome the government's decision to consult on introducing a social media ban for under-16s, something, Mr. Speaker, that the Tories didn't do in office, and they didn't even support until last week. But the average 12-year-old now spends 29 hours a week on a smartphone, whilst more than 500 children a day are being referred to mental health services for anxiety. These stats are not unrelated. Parents, teachers and members across these benches can see the damage that social media is doing to our young, developing minds every single day. Does the Prime Minister agree that the scale of harm demands swift action and that this consultation must lead to timely decisions?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is an issue of real concern to parents. As a father of two teenage children, I know just how much concern it is. That is why we will have a consultation to look at expert and international evidence to get this right, and we will respond by the summer. And that includes looking at the question of the age that children can access social media and restriction on addictive features. I'm also concerned, as is the Education Secretary, about the screen time use for those under the age of 5. So we'll look at all of those issues and make sure that Ofsted checks enforcement of bans during schools.
Mr. Speaker, the Bertie Arms is a fantastic family pub, but because of the Chancellor's tax raid on local business, they face a 2,000% increase in their business rates by 2029. That means the Treasury will lose £200,000 in tax take, and Uffington will lose the heart of its community. Now, the Prime Minister promised not to put up taxes on working people, so how does he justify a 2,000% tax attack on working family businesses like this pub?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're working with the sector to put in the necessary support, but I would remind her that 7,000 pubs closed on their watch, and she didn't say a word about it.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Norfolk is a dental desert causing real suffering for my constituents. I welcome government action so far, including 21,000 extra urgent emergency appointments. But we are the only region without a dental school. The University of East Anglia is ready to open one. So could the Prime Minister set out what more we will do as a government to tackle the dentistry crisis, and will he back our calls for a new dental school in our region?
Prime Minister.
Well, since day one, she's fought for her constituents on this issue, and I pay tribute to her in relation to that. I agree the University of East Anglia would be an excellent candidate for any additional funded dentistry places available in the future. Mr. Speaker, we're also reforming contracts and making sure dentists spend more time working in the NHS to ring thousands of extra appointments to fix the failure that we were left with.
Final question, Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Children with disabilities and special educational needs in Somerset will be severely hit if the government goes ahead with removing the remoteness uplift from those authorities. Will the government commit to ensuring that those councils with the largest land area in the country, of which Somerset is one, are properly reimbursed for the cost of remoteness so that children in my Taunton and Wellington constituency do not suffer as a result?
Prime Minister.
Well, we do understand the challenges in rural communities, and we'll look at that as part of the work we're doing on reform.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches change over. Point of order, Dr. Ellie-Chance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understood that the purpose of Prime Minister's questions was for the Prime Minister to answer questions from MPs, and yet...
I've not got the responsibility for the answers from the Prime Minister. I certainly don't want that responsibility. It is up to the Prime Minister if he answers that question. That's why I closed down. He is not there to ask questions of your party. I think we'll leave it at that. I'm not continuing the debate at this stage. Right. We now come to statements. Secretary of State, Ed Miliband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement about the Warm Homes Plan, which we published today. Mr. Speaker, this is a plan focused on the #1 issue facing our country, the cost of living crisis, and on the scourge of fuel poverty, which affects millions of families across Britain. Now, at the budget, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, took an average of £150 of costs off energy bills from April. This winter, we've expanded the warm home discount to a total of 6 million families, and today we allocate £15 billion in our Warm Homes Plan. Mr. Speaker, a more than doubling of public investment in home upgrades compared to the last Parliament. In fact, the biggest public investment in home upgrades in British history to cut bills and tackle fuel poverty. And in making this investment, we turn the page on a lost decade of the last government's failure. Home insulation levels falling by more than 90% between 2010 and 2024. The promise of minimum energy efficiency standards for renters broken. The cancellation of the zero carbon home standard and the repeated failures of schemes like the Green Deal, the Green Homes Grant and the Eco Scheme. And worst of all, Mr. Speaker, our dependence on fossil fuels leaving us exposed to the worst energy bills crisis in generations. Mr. Speaker, the last government failed time after time. This government is doing the work to put it right. The starting point for this plan is that clean energy is not only the right choice for energy security and reducing emissions, but for cutting people's bills. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, the public agrees. They are showing record demand for technologies like solar, batteries and heat pumps that can save families hundreds of pounds a year. Heat pump sales in Britain have grown by around 50% annually, one of the fastest growing markets in Europe. Last year saw a record number of rooftop solar installations. And the driving purpose of this plan is to ensure those benefits are available not just to the wealthiest, but to families throughout our country at every level of income. The driving purpose of this Labour government to stand up for working people and tackle the affordability crisis. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me set out the measures we are announcing in our plan today. First, today we announced £5 billion of public investment to directly deliver home upgrades for low-income families. This will help families living in social housing and low-income owner-occupiers to have warmer homes and lower bills. In setting out this plan, we're abolishing the failed Eco Scheme and making the principled decision that we should fund support through public investment, not levies on bills. And our plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, pays heed to all the evidence that says this funding is best delivered with local authorities and mayors in the driving seat. People, those representing local people, delivering for local people. And at the same time, we recognise the challenges facing suppliers who used to deliver eco, so we will ensure this extra money is used to help support them. And my right honourable friend, the Minister for Energy Consumers, will convene a working group of contractors, social housing providers and local authorities to oversee this work. Overall, this allocation to tackle fuel poverty is the biggest public investment in tackling fuel poverty in our nation's history. Second, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a scandal that 1.6 million children live in private accommodation suffering from cold, damp or mould, according to citizens' advice. We on this side believe in a simple principle. If you rent a home, private or social, your landlord has a responsibility to ensure it is safe, warm and affordable to heat. The last government, Madam Deputy Speaker, promised higher standards, and then they ripped up that promise. Today we deliver. By 2030, private landlords will have to upgrade their properties to meet minimum standards of energy efficiency, and we've consulted on similar rules in the social rented sector. tackling the scourge of poor quality rented homes and cutting bills for renters. And I can tell the House that these measures alone will lift over 500,000 families out of fuel poverty. Third, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is right we target help at those most in need, but we know the affordability crisis stretches well beyond those on low incomes. We want to make it easier for all households to cut their bills by choosing a heat pump, solar or batteries. So building on the steps we took at the budget to make electricity cheaper, we're expanding the boiler upgrade scheme, increasing investment every year out to 2030, with for the first time a universal offer of £2,500 for a heat battery or air-to-air heat pump, as well as £7,500 to install a conventional heat pump. But I want to go further. Currently, just 1 in 20 homes in Britain have solar panels installed on their rooftops. We are determined to unleash a rooftop revolution, helping many more families generate their own energy to cut their bills. So I can announce that the government is for the first time ever setting aside up to £2 billion to subsidise zero and low interest loans for solar panels, batteries and other technologies, learning from the successful experience of other countries and meeting the demand of people for this technology. And Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just the first step, with a further £3 billion available for loans and investments over the coming years through our Warm Homes Fund. Fourth, as we upgrade existing homes, we will ensure that new homes are built cheaper to run with solar and clean heating as standard. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just common sense. People cannot understand why we are building new homes with higher bills. The reason is because they refused to act. We are putting an end to this absurd situation. We will publish the future home standards shortly, and for the first time, solar panels will be fitted as standard in new homes. And alongside the other measures I've set out, this is designed to help treble the number of homes with solar by the end of the decade. Fifth, to make these changes happen, we cannot go on with the old system of accountability and delivery that has frankly failed. A situation where people have to navigate a fragmented and confusing system of home upgrades delivered through a bewildering number of organisations and schemes. And we need to face up to the fact that after repeated failures of the last government to deliver schemes effectively, we need a specialist body with the technical expertise and focus required. So consolidating functions from Ofgem and other organisations and abolishing SALIX, and with no increase in arm's length bodies, we will establish a new Warm Homes Agency. It will deliver impartial advice and guidance, work with local authorities and businesses, oversee government schemes, backed by a reformed system of consumer protection. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will put an end to the scandalous failure of accountability and regulation and the waste of the public's money we saw under the last government. Finally, we are determined to ensure this rollout delivers not just for consumers but workers too. We're the largest producers of gas boilers in Europe, and there's a huge opportunity to harness this expertise to produce heat pumps as well. Manufacturers are already embracing this opportunity, including Ideal Heating in Hull, Valent in Derbyshire, which I visited last year, and Copeland in Northern Ireland. But currently less than 40% of heat pumps sold in Britain are made in Britain. We're setting a new aim of at least 70% of heat pumps installed in the UK being made in the UK, backed by a trebling of public investment in heat pump manufacturing with £90 million set aside today. Overall, we expect the Warm Homes Plan to support up to 180,000 additional jobs in energy efficiency, heat pumps and heat networks by the end of the decade, creating opportunities for builders, electricians, plumbers and installers, as well as new workers entering the industry. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we will establish a new task force with the TUC, working with business, to ensure these jobs are well paid and highly skilled, with a proper role for trade unions. Because we are a Labour government, we expect the rights of working people to be at the heart of this industry's future. Madam Deputy Speaker, taken together, this is a landmark plan that stands in a great reforming tradition of Labour governments. After 1945 delivering on the promises of homes for the people, modernising the nation's housing stock under Harold Wilson in the 1960s, introducing the decent home standard for social housing in the 2000s. Each Labour government meeting the rightful expectations of working people that the next generation can expect higher standards of living than the last. That is what this government seeks to do in our time. A plan to cut bills for millions, help lift 1 million families out of fuel poverty and create good jobs. And I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Secretary of State for advance copy of his statement today. Today's announcement is long overdue, an entire year to be exact. During the general election, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labour Party claimed that they would cut household bills. This announcement should be part of that. Yet, in that time, since the general election and under this Secretary of State's watch, energy bills have not fallen, they have gone in the opposite direction. Energy bills are up by £200 since that election, partly as a result of the Secretary of State's own political choices. We believe there is a greater role in our energy system for home batteries. We support a more technology-agnostic approach to air-to-air heat pumps, and of course we believe rooftop solar is much better than carpeting the countryside in huge solar farms. But the Secretary of State is ignoring the core problem. We are in an electricity price crisis of this Secretary of State's own making. And even if we are as charitable as possible and accept that they reach 5 million households, as they say they will, benefit from this plan, then it does nothing to cut bills for 83% of the country. But those households will all pay much higher taxes because of Labour's budget, including to fund this Secretary of State's £15 billion plan. And those households are struggling with their energy bills now because of the choices of the Secretary of State. So, turning to the specific measures in the plan, his department's own figures show that the public is becoming more sceptical about heat pumps. Between winter 2024 and spring 2025, the share of people saying that they were unlikely to install an air source heat pump increased from 38% to 45%. And if you ask anyone why they don't want a heat pump, they will tell you it's the high upfront cost. Yes, but it's but it's also the high ongoing running costs, which often make them more expensive to run than a gas boiler. There is a serious risk that this government legally binding targets are forcing them to push people into buying heat pumps, but those families will all be locked into sky-high running costs because this government has a political target which is pushing up their electricity bills at the same time. Yet this plan does nothing to address those high ongoing running costs. Instead, last week, the government announced they are locking this country into higher energy prices for decades through the botched wind auction. Just imagine, Madam Deputy Speaker, if there was a plan on the table to cut the cost of running a heat pump by 20% instantly, a cheap power plan that wouldn't involve raising tax on working people to fund handouts, a plan that would axe the carbon tax and scrap the Secretary of State's rip-off wind subsidies to cut bills for every family in this country. Wouldn't that be a much better approach to make heat pumps much more attractive? Next, what steps will his department take to make sure the low-interest loans will provide good value for money? How many homes will benefit from the low and zero-interest loan scheme? And how will it be determined who gets a low-interest loan or a zero-interest loan? On the changes to the minimum energy efficiency standards for rented homes, he will know that the previous government did more than any other to improve energy efficiency standards, with half of all homes having an EPC rating of C or above when we left office, compared to 14% when the Secretary of State left office in 2010. But has his department carried out any impact assessment of what the 2030 deadline will cost landlords, and therefore how much will be passed on to renters in increased rents? His own government's data shows it will cost over £12,000 to upgrade a home from EPC E to C. £12,000 of that will then be passed on to families in increased rents. We cannot ignore all the cost that this government is imposing on the housing sector and the impact that they will have on the cost of living for families in this country. The government is going to set up a new quango, though, the Warm Homes Agency, to administer these schemes. So can the Secretary of State tell us how much this new quango will cost the taxpayer, how it will be held accountable, and why he decided to spend money setting up a new quango rather than have those functions delivered by his own department that he controls? And finally, the Secretary of State has already been forced by this House to ban Great British Energy from spending taxpayers' money on solar panels when there is evidence of forced labour in the supply chain. Of course, we welcome that. But can he assure the House that he will apply that same ban on slave labour to solar panel installations funded by the Warm Homes Plan? And when will he publish details of how that mechanism will work so that it can be scrutinised by this House? In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is ignoring that affordability crisis the Secretary of State talks about is a crisis of his own making. They are ignoring the fact that they are locking this country into paying higher bills for far longer. If they truly want to encourage people to adopt green technology like heat pumps or EVs, they need to make electricity cheap. That means they could adopt the Conservatives' cheap power plan to cut everyone's electricity bills by 20% and scrap this reckless Clean Power 2030 target, which is locking everyone into paying higher bills for far longer.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's always a pleasure to be opposite the honourable gentleman. Let me just make a few points to him, sort of in the gentlest way I can. Look, first of all, on the cost of electricity, the Chancellor in her budget did more in one decision, which was to transfer the 75% of the renewables obligation to public spending to cut electricity costs, than they did in 14 years in power. The second point is he's shouting about bills. Let me tell him the average bill in 2025 was lower in real terms than 2024, and so was the price cap, as he will know from the figures. And I am incredibly proud that this government, unlike the last government, is taking £150 of costs off bills, thanks to the Chancellor's decision, funded by taxes on the wealthy, and they oppose all of those tax measures. He talks about the renters issue. I mean, I think basically what I heard, which maybe shouldn't surprise me, is that he is actually against the higher standards for
over where I am. If you come to where I am, you'll have a better shot. You see where I am? Come back, come back, come back, come back, come back. Ice, ice, ice. Ice, ice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Strap this.